Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear friends, I pray you're all well. Let's start Al-Fatiha. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وامنحنا يا ربنا علما وعملا وقربا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا كريم. So, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we were looking at the verses of Surah al-Anfal, and we're continuing with the theme of the surah, which is that victory and comes from Allah. Like all of the outward means that people prepare and use are just that, they're means, but the means are not sufficient to bring about an end. Yes, generally the means lead to the end, but Allah has made it that way, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows here that the means are not everything, right? Rather, Allah. So He tells us to prepare the means, but ultimately trust is to be placed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what He said to the Sahaba regarding this incident, the Battle of Badr. So we first start when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them, وَإِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ, or in another qira'ah, مُرْدَفِينَ, the fatha. And remember when you cried out to your Lord for help, and He answered, I will reinforce you with 1,000 angels, followed by many others. So here we have a number of things where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us of this situation where the Sahaba, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, yes, you're going to meet them in battle now. You're going to face Quraysh in battle. The Sahaba, ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, started calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as did the messenger. In fact, the place where the camp, the tent of the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had been set up, when you go to Badr now, there's a masjid there, and you can go inside, and his tent was in that mosque, where the mosque is now, and further ahead is the actual field of Badr. And what happened is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw that there's 300 odd number of people there. 300 وبضعة عشر. Bid'ah in Arabic is used to refer to something from 3 till 10. So some of the ulama have said 313, 314, something like this. But it's not the size of the army of Quraysh, which was 1,000 or so, right? And they had better armor, better equipment, camels and everything. So then in this situation, what happened? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to the tent. He prayed 2 raka'at, 2 units, raka'atain, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was with him. And so what did the Prophet do? He prayed 2 rak'ahs, and then he said, Allahumma anjirli ma wa'atani. Oh Allah, fulfill this promise. Raise his hands high. Oh Allah, fulfill this promise you've made to me. Oh Allah, in tuhlak, Allahumma in tuhlik hadhihi al-isabata la tu'badu fil ard. Oh Allah, if you destroy this group of people, i.e. through Quraysh, if you allow them to be destroyed, you won't be worshipped on earth, because He's the final message. They're the supporters of the final messenger. So He's the final messenger with the final message. They're the supporters of the messenger and the message. So if they're all destroyed, then what's going to happen. So he kept asking, and he had a cloak on his shoulders, and that fell off because of how much he was raising his hands. That's one of the things the Prophet did, that there are many sunnah regarding dua. One of them is to have your hands at chest level, but then sometimes the Prophet raised him, like when he was praying for rain, and it's an expression of need, more need, and really imploring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant what's being requested. So he kept doing this until the cloak fell off, and then Sayyidina Abu Bakr took it and put it back on him, and then he comforted him, said, Allah will fulfill the promise He made to you, don't worry, right? And he said, that's enough, you've asked enough. Allah will fulfill that promise, what is promised to you. And so then he said, so is tastaghithuna rabbakum, and recall when you were asking. So Ghawth is when you're in great need and you ask someone. What were they doing? They're asking Allah for victory. They're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow them to defeat their enemies. And the root word is for this is Ghayth, which is rain, but rain that brings mercy, rain that brings life. You can drink from it, you can use it to water your crops and these sorts of things. So he's saying is recall that time, recall that moment and all the details within when you were repeatedly calling on your loving Lord. So He's the Lord of the believers. He's helped them, He's given them faith, given them iman, helped them in the past. That loving Lord, they keep calling Him with full of hope and expecting his promise to be fulfilled, what He made to His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Fastajaba lakum. So Allah truly completely responded to istajaba. Istafa'ala here, as we've seen a number of times, is the emphatic form of the verb. So Allah did it, but in the most emphatic way, and that's the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it, but people don't see it. But sometimes in every dua that's answered, it's a miracle, right, in reality. But what happens is sometimes it manifests in a way that just leaves people gobsmacked, and this is it, to be outmatched by an enemy in numbers and equipment, and yet they still defeated them. So say fastajaba lakum. So He truly responded to you. So He truly responded and answered your dua with what? Anni mumiddukum bi alfin min al malaikati murdifin. I am not, I am, it didn't say I am going to, or I will reinforce you. I am your reinforcer. There's a difference between saying fulanun yahrisul madrasa, fulan harisul madrasa. There's a difference between saying so and so guards the school, or so and so is the school guard. The latter gives the meaning of this is his fixed role, and this is something that he never stops doing. Or here, in the sense that he's certainly going to do it. This is not changing, right? And he's certainly going to do it in a way that's befitting Allah's Majesty. Inni anni mumiddukum. I'm the one who's going to aid you. Madad, imdad. So imdad in Arabic is for any sort of help that comes, and so amadda, that form for, and the normal verb, thulathi verb, madda, is used for in negative meanings generally. And so I am certainly going to help you with 1,000 of the angels, right? Murdifin. So the number, as we talked about, it was originally 1,000, and then it was upped to 3,000, and then He said if you're firm and resolute and steadfast, it'll be 5,000. And we discussed that earlier in Surah Ali Imran. And so He says, so that's where this variance in the numbers in various verses, because there was an order and an ascension in the number. So murdifin. So murdifin, those who you can read it murdifin, that's one qira'ah, and murdafin with a fatha, that's another qira'ah. So murdifin with the qira'ah is like those at the front are making the others who they're leading, the others they're leading, who the front ones are leading are their radif. Each one is the radif of the one in front. So being followed and supported and backed up, you could say, but literally just means those who are behind them. So a group will come, the leaders, and then there'll be many behind them supporting them. That's what murdifin means. Or murdafin with a fatha, and you can read that in a passive way, that each one has each one is behind others. So it's just looking at it from two opposite angles. You can read it in that way. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So the group at the front in one qira'ah, then the group at the back. Okay. Right. So then he says, وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرًا. Beautiful. وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ بِهِ قُلُوبُكُمْ وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Allah has made this a sign of victory and reassurance for your hearts. Victory comes only from Allah. Surely Allah is almighty, all wise. This is beautiful. So he says, so this is a general rule. Oops. The general rule for victory in everything, right? That it's come from Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped the believers in this situation and in other situations after. So this victory and this comes from Allah. So this is teaching believers that all good, بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرِ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. All good is in your hands, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can do anything. So this is this key central focus. Sometimes people get too worried about the absence of means or the presence of means. And like in Surah, was it Surah At-Tawbah? إذ أعجبتكم كثرتكم يوم حنين إذ أعجبتكم كثرتكم. On the day of Hunayn, where there were a number of people who joined the Muslim army, and they were like 12,000 strong. And then he said, recall on the day of Hunayn, that battle when your numbers impressed you. And people were thinking, today we won't lose due to a lack of numbers. And, initially a lot of people ran at the beginning of the battle. And so what happened is, Allah is saying, don't, excuse me, he's saying, don't put stock in outward means to the point that you think that's all that matters. The ultimate reality, وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. So he starts off by saying, وَمَا جَعَلَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بُشْرًا. And Allah has only made it as some good news. Some tremendous good news. Bushra, a piece of good news. And he didn't say Bushra lakum, right? Because it is good news for you, but he's made it Bushra. It's just, so you don't focus on that it's for you, just you focus on the fact that it's obvious it's for them, but it's a tremendous, huge piece of good news that Allah is sending the angels to help and aid and assist them. So there's a discussion amongst the ulama, did the angels actually take part in the fighting? And some said no, they were just there to stand back so that the believers could feel their presence and knowing that the angels are here, so it would give them more courage and give them more encouragement to go and fight. And others of the ulama have said no, the angels did fight. So we're going to combine that, yes, the angels were primarily there not to fight, because the number was so large that if the angels really did go there for the fight, no one would have survived of the idolaters, right? And so the angels were definitely there, and some did take part in the fighting. And we've got various hadith from Sahl ibn Hunayf and Abu Dawood. Another one of the Sahaba, his name escapes me, but a number of the Sahaba did say that they saw people fighting, or one man was chasing someone in the battle, and he had his sword raised, and then all of a sudden that man's head's come off. Why? Because the angel sliced it. And then they were seeing people who they recognized who are fighting, but it was actually the angels. So the majority of angels were not fighting. And so there was some help, but mostly the angels are there. Illa bushra. Wama illa. So the ma and illa is a very strong negation. Allah, the Supreme King, has not made this anything but a tremendous good news. Right, and tremendous bit of good news for you, right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِتَطْمَئِنَّ bihi qulubukum, and in order for your hearts to be with this good news to come to be at rest. So someone in the normally in the battlefield situation, I assume it must be really difficult. The adrenaline coursing through a person's body, the worry, the fight and flight or freeze response, and all of this is happening. And especially when you're facing an army. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a much larger army, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He made this, the news of the angels, good news for them, and in order for their hearts to, through this news, for their hearts to be at rest and at ease. Imagine someone, right? You've got some martial artist, the best in the world, right? He's had thousands of fights, won most of them, let's say, and he's taken he knows how to take a beating if it comes to it, and he's going to have a fight with someone, right? And this other person who he's fighting may be bigger, stronger, whatever, but it's his first or second fight. And how is this person going to be feeling? The martial artist, let's say, how is he going to be feeling? And how is the opponent going to be feeling? The one with more experience is going to be feeling calm and collected, right? Yes, there may be some adrenaline and everything going through, but it's not going to affect him in a way that makes him panic or anything like that. Why? He's been there before, right? He's done the dance before, so to speak, so that he's calm and collected, as opposed to the other person may be nervous and shivering, and it's a completely different situation. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this good news to the believers, so they felt at ease and they felt calm and composed at this. This is a huge advantage, right? They were given, and and if you look at the Battle of Badr in detail, there's a number of things that happened to make it go their way, such as where they set camp and these sorts of things. So Allah did all of this to help them. And then He says, for their hearts, the word qalb is something that flips and changes, and so that is still and at ease. So this alternating, changing, flipping heart is not doing that. It's still content. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ, and victory is not except from Allah. Literally, indillah, from the presence of Allah. He's not in a place, we know that. So metaphorically saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives victory, and any victory that does occurs through this supreme, all-powerful King. Allah has planned the way things go, and Allah makes it happen as He wants it. Don't rely on anything besides Him, and don't be despondent at the lack of any means, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one. The same situation with Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam and Jalut, David and Goliath. Same thing, victory comes from Allah. And then to prove that, it's as though a person might think, really? So he highly emphasizes the next statement to dispel any doubts. Inna Allah, and then he mentions the supreme name again. Allah, the supreme, all-powerful King. Allah, Inna Allah Azizun, almighty. No one can harm Him. No one can stop Him. No one can affect His decision. If He decides victory for someone, that's what's happening. Hakim, every single thing He does is wise. And so Hakim, there's a number of roots for this word, but it talks about wisdom. He knows everything, how things should be in the best way, how things should go. They always work out in the best way. And ahkam to dabba, it's like He stopped. Imagine something just being well built, tight. All the screws are tight and everything. It's not loose or flimsy. So everything He does is perfect, it's well, well designed, it happens in this way, that's great. Sometimes our minds might not perceive it, but in reality it is. And then when time passes and people look back, oh yes, you know what, it was like that. So inna Allah azizun hakim. And then he says to the believers, إِذْ يُغَشِّيكُمْ, or there's another qira'ah, إِذْ يُغْشِيكُمْ, or إِذْ يَغْشَاكُمْ النُّعَاسَ أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ. Remember when he caused drowsiness to overcome you. وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ بِهِ. And he sent down rain from the sky to purify you. وَيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمْ رِجْزَ الشَّيْطَانِ, and free you from whispers of shaitan. وَلِيَرْبِطَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتَ بِهِ الْأَقْدَامِ, and to strengthen your hearts and to make your steps firm. So this is beautiful, right? So he says, إِذْ يُغَشِّيكُمْ. So it's what this is referring to, it's as though the nu'as, this drowsiness, the early stages of sleep. In one qira'ah, it's as though it's like a blanket going over them. It's generally slowly covering them, reaching their minds, and then them losing consciousness as a person falling asleep. That's one way you can read it. Or another qira'ah, the yaghshakum, it's as though it's like it's overwhelming you, it's covering you like a big wall around the person, and covered, and he's covered from above, like it's overcoming them. So it's as though the drowsiness was coming down from above and also creeping up to them and making them fall. Generally, people before a big event, especially one that could be life or death, don't generally sleep easily. They stay awake, and they're too stressed, in anticipation or worry about what's going to come. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed things for them, and Allah let them relax and sleep. So much so that many of them ended up having wet dreams, so which requires a ghusl. And then that was something that some may have worried about. But then what is it? So إِذْ يُغَشِّيكُمْ, Allah made that drowsiness and that sleep overcome you. أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ, so that you're safe, with a safety, tremendous safety from Him. They felt safe, they felt protected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on their side. أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ. And then He said, وَيُنَزِّلُ, and throughout the night He kept sending, again and again kept sending water, amazing pure water to them from the sky, making it rain. لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ بِهِ, so He can purify you through it, right? Wudu and ghusl and everything. So any effect of any impurity would be gone, which is also a sign that there's good to come. وَيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمْ رِجْزَ الشَّيْطَانِ, and to remove from you the whispers of the devil, which is basically shaitan coming to these people and making them think, O companions of Muhammad, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you think you're on the truth, and but you're gonna have to pray without water. You're gonna have to just fight in a state of impurity. You're thirsty. Had you been on the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have helped you. And all of these sorts of thoughts, He would have given you water to drink. He would have given you. These are the kind of thoughts shaitan is bringing them, and making them think that. Why? Just to make them nervous, just to make them lose their resolve. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down abundant rain for them. So all, the wells were filled in the containers and everything, and they had plenty of water to calm them and to give them another indication. Look, it's coming, right? Victory is coming. You don't worry. وَلِيَرْبِطَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ, and in order to strengthen your hearts. Rabt is when you tie something, and sometimes you can tie something in order to strengthen it. For example, if you look at a barrel, the way barrels are made, there's usually like a metal strip around the middle of it. That wood there, because it's bent, it's the weakest part of the barrel, right? Because it can just go outwards and just snap. But when the metal strips are there, it's tied to keep it in, right, to maintain that pressure so the wood doesn't buckle and then break or splinter. So that's equivalent to this. Allah tied their hearts and metaphorically strengthened their hearts so they remain firm and they remain strong and they may remain, courageous and full of resolve to go and face the enemy. And then he said, وَيُثَبِّتَ بِهِ الْأَقْدَامِ, and in order for him to strengthen or make footsteps firm. Which footsteps? So there's two positions here. Either it's literal or metaphorical, and we can combine both actually. So the literal meaning is that Uhud, especially where the believers were, it was quite sandy, right? And places where there's sand and your feet can sink into the sand, it's very difficult to walk. I remember walking in this place once where there were lots of pebbles, right? And every time you stepped into it, you kind of sunk in a little bit with each step. So it became very hard to walk there. Like, it's really hard on the calves, walking in that environment. And then to have to run or, fight in that environment is incredibly difficult. So the rain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down made the sand compress with the rain. So when they walked on it, it's like they're walking on firm ground. So to make feet, footsteps firm. Also, the rain it did that. So it gave them confidence. Look, we don't have to face this challenge. It's easier now. We can fight. So that increases their confidence and their resolve in that regard. So both were blessings, and both perspectives are valid, and it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, إِذْ يُوحِي رَبُّكَ إِلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ, and remember, O Prophet, when your Lord revealed to the angels, إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ فَثَبِّتُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, I am with you, so make the believers stand firm. سَأُلْقِي فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الرُّعْبَ فَاضْرِبُوا فَوْقَ الْأَعْنَاقِ وَاضْرِبُوا مِنْهُمْ كُلَّ بَنَانٍ. So make the believers stand firm. I will cast horror into the hearts of the disbelievers, so strike their necks and strike their fingertips. So, this is actually one example of, there are a number of verses of the Quran people take out of context and say, oh, look, the Quran's saying, go do all of this, No. Right? And there are historical context to verses, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Muslims guidance in these situations. And other religions also have guidance on guidance as in instructions on matters of warfare. Every country has instructions, the Geneva Convention that's supposed to be followed. Right? Everyone, there has to be certain ways of conducting warfare that are known, right? So we have this, and we have many hadiths from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you can't use it to vilify anything that the Quran is saying. There's a context to it all, and then applications or whatever. This is something that people would consult current day scholars about when it comes to situations that refer to incidents in our times. But what we get is just people reading the Quran, or even translations, and not even understanding what's being said, and say, look, it's calling to go chop off everyone's necks and everyone's fingers and whatever. And that's not the case, right? So there are there are laws and there are rules, and there are there's a reason why we have the science of jurisprudence, right? It's not something you can just understand straight away from one translation of the Quran. And so all of these things that are taken out of context and whatever, it's a disservice, and it indicates lack of academic integrity and honesty. Are there rules about warfare? Of course. Every religion has rules about warfare. Every religion has rules about engaging the enemy in these sorts of things in every country and every group, right? But the way some of these people understand it is just far, way off. So anyway, so he says, and recall when your loving Lord, so great honor here for an honoring of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he revealed to the angels. Wahi iha is a discrete communication. What did he say? Inni, nominal sentence, powerful. Anni, right? Nominal sentence. Ma'akum, I am with you. Right? فَثَبِّتُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, I am with you with all of the help and support that anyone needs for the believers, what they would need. But here is addressing the angels, so I just saying that they have his support, right? I am with you, a term that's generally used for to strengthen and support someone. Look, I'm on your side, I'm with you, right? فَثَبِّتُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, so you go support and strengthen the believers, make them stand firm and be resolute. So the angels just being there increase the believers in this capacity. So he says, سَأُلْقِي, true, this is true, a promise that will soon happen, we understand from the scene. سَأُلْقِي فِي قُلُوبِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الرُّعْبَ, I will cast in the hearts, the qulub. Remember we said qalb, to turn over, to flip. So, the hearts won't be firm and strong, unlike those of the believers. So here he's going to throw in ru'ab, intense fear, that's accompanied with a worry about something imminent, something bad that's imminent, right? So this intense fear, Allah will throw that into the hearts of the disbelievers. So they had to face this, and they had to face some of the angels on the battle, and the believers had thought that the enemy was actually less than they actually were, and idolaters thought the believers were more than they actually were, as we see in Surah Al-Imran. And the believers had the angels supporting them and boosting their confidence, and they had the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these were the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthened and supported the believers with. So he says, فَضْرِبُوا فَوْقَ الْأَعْنَاقِ, to the angels. So go and smite, go and attack, strike above the neck, and that's a killing blow, basically. If your spinal cord is severed, you're dead. If your brain is damaged, you're dead. If you get hit on the temple, basically, you're dead. So generally in that area, hit them, above the neck, the killing blow. وَضْرِبُوا مِنْهُمْ كُلَّ بَنَانٍ, and strike from them every finger. So banan, Allah. There are a couple of positions on this. So one, it means fingers, right? It literally means fingers. That's where the English word banana comes from, because the bunch of bananas in Arabic is called bananatul mawz, the fingers of mawz. The mawz is the Arabic word for bananas. But so they would call one of them bananatul mawz, the finger of bananas, right? Whatever its scientific name is, if you want to give it. So that's where the word comes from. And so either it means this, which makes sense. They used to do this in medieval times as well, especially like with archers, right? So archers were very competent and skilled with their bow, but in close range, in hand-to-hand combat or with a weapon, they weren't very efficient, because they spent all their time training, because they were long distance warriors. So what they would do is, if a knight, or if a warrior, someone in battle captured someone, or they ended up getting close to an archer, instead of spending all of the effort in trying to kill him, what they would do, they just strike the hand or cut off his fingers. Sometimes just a few of his fingers would do. And if the person can't pull the string of the bow, then he's rendered basically useless in the battle, right? So do that. That's one position. So and the other position is banana refers to joints. So strike their joints. So once again they're rendered incapable in battle. So that was what was said to the angels. And we'll stop here, and then we'll continue from this point on. Allah bless you all. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.